good friend of mine sent me this. This is the United Thing channel. Welcome to today's show. A good friend of mine sent me this over the Saturnalia holiday, and I have to cover this. It's important for everybody to know about this because you're going to hear people talking about this in regards to T-Mobile, but you need to understand that every single mobile carrier is going to do this. How do we know? Because that's how they do it. They set a precedent with one company and then it rolls out into everyone. We're currently seeing that with trials with banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, doing their carbon footprint run, where they're having you monitored and tracked with your carbon footprint via your purchases that you're making on your credit card or your debit card. And that's the beginning of getting people desensitized for the carbon footprint. This is how they're going to start regulating your speech, even via text messaging, by fining you. The mobile carriers are going to fine you based on hate speech. Now, they're going to deny this because this is set up so that they can deny it, because they don't expect people to read between the lines. I'll read to you what they have written on their own website in regards to SEV0 and violating what they call SHAFT, which is a acronym which really breaks down and of course has that word hate speech involved in it, which means people like me and you, because they determine what we say as hate speech. So this is important for people to realize. And now before I read this thing to you verbatim, for anyone out there that goes, well, what can we do? How do we do something? Everybody out there thinks this is supposed to be like a Civil War movie. I'll tell you right now, if you're looking for a blueprint on how to break away from the New World Order, we all have to break away from technology. It's as simple as that. And we could sit here and we could say, well, you're talking on YouTube right now, and you're listening on YouTube right now. It takes all of us. It takes figuring out other ways for us to interact, to be around one another, and to stop this from occurring. Because technology is the New World Order. The entire surveillance state is through technology. We've enslaved ourselves with tech. And the reason that T-Mobile and big tech can get away with this now, stuff like this, is because we've become so reliant on technology that they could do whatever they want and people will follow because it's too hard for them to break away from the tech. That's why they've waited to do this. They've waited years so that it becomes a part of your everyday life. Texting, calling, looking things up on your phone, getting answers for questions on your phone. So dependent on the technology, almost like the character at the end of Leave the World Behind, which I broke down. If you didn't see that video, you can find here on this channel, where the character's like, I don't know what to do without my phone. They've done that to us by design, so that now we're at a point in 2023 going into 2024 where we need the phone so much so that they can start saying stuff like this and doing stuff like this and fining people who have phones for saying things that they don't like, and people will have to comply or they won't have a phone. Now again, people out there are going to go, well, I'll get rid of T-Mobile and I'll go to Verizon, I'll go to Comcast, I'll go to whoever. It's all the same thing. It's going to filter into each one. They're going to desensitize people first with this run. They're going to see how the data goes. They're going to see who leaves the company and goes to other companies, which they don't really care. They just want to know how much so this is going to affect people, the terms of service, if they're going to see it, if they're going to pick up on it. And then they're going to run the experiment, and they're going to censor people, and they're going to fine people and see if people comply and pay their fines. Now, eventually, this with the digital currency, you can sit here and look at this now and say, well, they're going to fine me for what I say via text message or anything else, or whatever I do looking up on the internet. They're going to fine me. I won't pay the fine. Well, that's understandable, because what idiot would pay the fine? But eventually, this is going to be doxed out of your bank account, because when everything's digital, when you sit there and you go, well, I don't have to comply to this, I won't comply to the IRS, I won't comply to that. They want everything digital for this reason. They will dox your, your allowance money, your equality income, whatever they call it these days, where everybody makes the same amount of money. You get an allowance in your bank account. And of course, if you don't comply with everything they say, they will take that from you. So let's read this, okay? Verbatim. What's happening is beginning January 1st, T-Mobile is rolling out 3 new fees for non-compliant traffic that result in a severity 0 violation, a SEV0, which represents the most harmful violation to consumers and is the highest level of escalation with which a carrier will engage with bandwidth. This applies across all products. SMS, MMS, short code, toll-free, and 10 DLC. That traverses T-Mobile's that traverse T-Mobile's network. So if you scroll down, you hear that, you're probably like, oh, okay, what's the big deal? So look at the tiers. This is where they use this is how they get away with this stuff, is the lingo they use. And this is how they get away with everything. Because the way they put it, if they put it and they said, hey, the carbon footprint is going to be digital slavery and you're not going to be able to go anywhere, everybody like, screw you, who gave you the power? Let's stop from happening. They don't tell you it that way because they don't expect you to think, because you're in a society now where they don't want you to think or expect you to think, and they feed you information that's not real. So your answer for everything is already a force-fed answer that they've already fed to you ahead of time because they know how to program your mind. So tier 1 would be a $2,000 fine for phishing and social engineering. Yes, believe it or not, they're using the term social engineering. Of course, they're using it not in the way that they're actually, they're really social engineering the masses through technology like this, through not just social influencers, but through actually putting things like this in place. This is a mass social engineering because this is how you control people's behavior. But they're using it because, again, when they're controlling your behavior by telling you what you can and not say, what you can't say this, you can't do that, right? That's social engineering. So they're using social engineering just with this, but they're telling you that social engineering refers to the practice of targeting individuals in a way that manipulates individuals to reveal private information like credit card numbers or social security numbers. So, of course, when you hear that on paper, you're like, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, that's somebody trying to get my social. They're phishing for information. That's a good thing. They should be fined for that. Okay, so tier number 2, $1,000 for illegal content. Included content must be legal in all 50 states and federally. Illegal content includes, but it's not limited to, cannabis, marijuana, CBD, illegal prescriptions, and solicitation. Okay, so we were like, okay, well, we can talk about this is where they're pretty much telling you that this was going to happen. Tier 3, $500 fine for all other violations, including but not limited to shaft. So you might say, shaft, are they talking about ball shaft? Yeah, pretty much they are. You may remember, the obelisk, the monuments that they're obsessed with. Yeah, they look like giant wieners. Yeah, the shafts, so that's, phallus worship. So anyway, how ironic they call it shaft. Shaft, this is what they're telling you, would be the 3rd tier violation. Listen to this. It's an acronym that stands for sex, hate, alcohol, firearms, and tobacco. It outlines the categories of text messages specifically regulated due to moral and legal issues and is monitored and enforced by the Cellular Telephone Industries Association and the mobile carriers. But what you might say, okay, that sounds all, it sounds like, protocol. Yeah, it's a TOS. Okay, nothing in there is making me go crazy. No, tell me what hate speech is. Tell me what it is. Right? So if I text the word, I can't say the word here because we're already dealing with that on YouTube. Just pick a word that somebody doesn't like or agree with, right? And you text it to somebody. Maybe you're even saying it in a different, you're saying it like jokingly, right? Like make the Yuletide gay, right? Because we're all making the Yuletide gay this year, right? What if you said that to somebody? Well, that's hate speech, right? How is the computer, the algorithm, the text going to actually read out to somebody else? Well, they just don't want you to say the word. So then when we say, well, there's words like that, but we don't mean it that way, well, you're removing that from speech because the word itself will be banned. And, of course, that just continues to filter on because people go, well, that word should be banned, like the N-word, for example, right? People don't realize they've been getting gaslit with that word for year after year after year. No matter what your skin color is, it's a word. They've been gaslighting people with that before this. That's the whole reason that you constantly hear about words that offend people. Instead of going, why don't you just toughen up and not be offended by a word? Or if somebody says a word that offends you, then you deal with that person with private justice. Take care of them. Take them out in the parking lot. Oh, right. Well, we can't do that because that's violent. Oh, okay. So what do we do about the person saying it? Well, we should censor what he says. Oh, okay. So everybody agrees because they're like, well, the M word's offensive. Let's get rid of it. Okay, then what's next, right? Then what's next? And look where we are now. Look where we are now, where you can't even ask questions about some type of poison being injected into people's bodies, right? That's hate speech. That's misinformation. Hate speech. Thing after thing after thing that they label as hate speech. And of course, we know this is everything to do with removing free speech so that these people could continue to get away with what they're doing in our society. They don't want you to get wise to it. That's why it's so important. The most important threat to them, the biggest threat to them, is me and you, period. That's it. Information is the threat. They're not super worried about people being armed. They're not super worried about anything else other than numbers, because it's always, every war is a numbers game. The army of 1,000,000 is always going to beat an army of 10, no matter how many weapons the army of 10 have. right? People might die, lay their lives down, but for the right cause, right? Well, they don't want you to even think like that because they don't want you to actually know and realize that there is a real boogeyman in the room, right? It is the guy behind the curtain in Oz, so to speak, who is manipulating everyone, who's doing this to everyone, who's gaslighting everyone, okay? So they have to remove speech, not to protect people's feelings. They do not give a crap about anybody in any community, okay, anybody's gender. They couldn't care less. They're the ones who are creating all this insanity in our society. They're doing that and saying that so they get people on board to agree with it. Because if they just came out and said, well, there's people questioning, what we're doing here, the government, people would be like, I don't really care. Oh, but they're questioning if this guy should be able to castrate his kid. Well, that's not fair. Take his speech away. Oh, okay. Then it just filters into everything else. Right? I've warned about this for years. So, for those of you that don't know, SEV0 is what this is called. So it's a SEV0 violation, okay? And so they're using that thing SHAFT, like I said, which of course is SHAFT. Sex, hate, alcohol, firearms, and tobacco content, right? So hate speech will be any type of text that they disagree with what the narrative is, and we keep giving them this. Now their foot is on the gas pedal, and we keep giving them this power, right? If we're not dependent on the technology, we break away from the technology, their power over us and their stranglehold over humanity breaks because it starts with the mind. This is all on the mind. All of it. All of the social anxiety, all the problems, it's all from what they're psychologically doing to everybody. And it's all being enabled through technology. Not just the influence that they have with how we should behave, which is really what this is about, which is what they're trying to do here, social engineering to control your behavior so that you edit yourself and and start behaving the way they want you to behave, which is not human anymore, which is literally agreeing with everything that they say. So when they tell you that you need to be locked in a cage for 2 hours because you question the government, they don't think you should even be able to question that. And then anyone else there says, hey, that's not right to lock that guy up. Oh, you get it too. So everybody just falls in line with these people. And everybody hears this and they go, that's a little extreme. It's not a little extreme. It's exactly what's happening. That's what this is leading towards. Okay? So when you see this story and you're like, wow, T-Mobile, I'll switch carriers. Don't waste your breath. Don't waste your time. Be a part of the social experiment for now. Because right now it's an experiment. Because they can fine you all you want. Don't pay the fine. That's number one. Do not pay the fine. Period. If you have something, don't be intimidated by, like it's a credit card person trying to get a debt paid off. They don't have any right to throw you in prison for not paying your credit card off. They're the ones who go into agreement to give you the money. Okay? So any of that type of stuff, don't be intimidated by it. And I know nobody out there would be intimidated for the most part who listens to my channel unless it's somebody new and they're just waking up. Okay, so go along with the social experiment. See if they actually try to find you and share it with people so that they can see it. But unfortunately, what this leads to with these insane narcissists in our society is that they will agree with this type of stuff because they actually believe in this phantom known as hate speech. They've been convinced of words. They're so hurtful. We need to eliminate them. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. And they have a stranglehold over all of us, right? So if we break from technology, think about what happens to this government. Now, I know it's easier said than done. I get it. I'm on a computer right now doing this. You're listening on a device, okay? But really, if people break away, where does this stranglehold come from? There's not enough of a military that they have to do this. It's just enslaving of the mind, and it's through the technology. Because, again, now that they know people are so dependent on their phones, everything's going to tie in. The currency system, that's why they're hell-bent on getting all this stuff done now. Because you're not going to be able to buy or sell without being inside of this system, right? You might say, well, we have to be in a system now to buy or sell. Well, not necessarily. You could barter and things like that. When everything's digital, there's none of that anymore. It's fully under their control. You'll have to monitor your behavior and do as they say and comply with everything, even at the most insane things. And it will be. There'll be all this stuff that should be outlawed, all these things they do in darkness, all these things with children. You won't be allowed to question that. You won't even be allowed to go be against that. No, absolutely not. They'll normalize all of it. And if you question it or say anything about it, you'll be persecuted. Your income will be cut off. Your ability to buy food or get food, all of it will be cut off. We don't want to be dependent on them. We need to be dependent on ourselves and take care of ourselves. So the answer to this, because people out there in the alt-right, they're like, we got to do something. Oh, ban T-Mobile. That's what you're going to hear, right? The alt-right's going to pick up on this story, and they're going to go, switch carriers, protest, boycott. They want you to do that stuff. They want you to boycott Target. They don't give a crap. The owner of Target doesn't give a crap. The government, in communist countries, the government and corporations are one and the same. So they don't care about money. They print money. Okay? There's bigger agendas psychologically here at play. So the alt-right will tell you to break away from T-Mobile, boycott T-Mobile, go to Verizon. They'll give you some alternative right-wing brand. This is how they're going to hurt people. Again, but in reality, if we broke free from the tech, all of these people lose all of their power over all of us. And you'll find out if you break away from the tech that your mental health improves, your anxiety improves. You know, I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. Every time I break free, every time I get offline, I feel so much better. Right? And I don't even do social media. This, you want to count this social media? Go ahead. But I don't go on there. I don't post pictures of myself. I don't look at other people's pictures of themselves and all the other nonsense that everybody's all caught up into. Everybody creating this facade of a world pretending that this is their lives when it's not. And people think it is. Like, look at so-and-so. Their life's so beautiful and perfect. Mine's not. It's a facade. They're taking pictures of all the good stuff. They're staging their lives so that you could kiss their rear end and look up to them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the problem with society. That's how you create narcissists, right? And now our society cares more about those things than they do it actually about being productive in society. So break from the tech. They have the stranglehold over us because of technology. And Sub-Zero, hate speech, and all this stuff is going to filter in to everything in our lives if we allow it to do that. And how do we allow it to do it? By continuing to have phones, by continuing to be dependent on phones. So if we break free, then these corporations can't go, hey, you know what? We're going to have a digital currency. Everyone goes, we don't want a digital currency anymore. We don't want phones anymore. So you could be your own little country. You can go over to Epos Island over there, and you have your digital currency over there with one another, right? But we need people to break free from this. And this is the narrative that you're not hear from the alt-right. The Amish were right all along, okay? For any of us, well, I grew up and I was like, what's up with them? I didn't really think much of tech. I've never been obsessed with technology, but I'm like, what's the deal? I didn't really understand the deal. Now I fully understand the deal. I'm not saying that they live perfect lives either, okay? But I'm saying the mindset of technology, being dependent on technology. Now, there's some things like, you're like, oh, well, they have a stove or they, drive a car. Okay, right? So they're not fully off grid, but they're away from this type of poison. This is the stranglehold of the New World Order, technology. And we feed the beast system by still having our technology. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. We need to come up with a plan to break free from it. Maybe we could buy enough land, but that's the thing. You buy enough land, well, they own the land still because you pay tax on the land. They'll throw you off the land. They'll create a false flag around the land and say that we're the new Waco. So you have to constantly be thinking and figuring things out. But the first thing is, like I've been saying for a long time, is get through the first phase of stuff that's to come. Because the grid, we are going to go offline for a period of time, okay, and then come back online. And that's how they're going to reset everything, reset your bank accounts, etc. And that's not part of this video. That's other content I covered. And again, I covered that over the website, uprisingrevival.com. But keep an eye on these stories, especially things involving hate speech, because hate speech is just code word for censorship on everything that disagrees with government, period. And obviously, as Christians, for those of you that follow and believe in Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, King of Kings, well, it's really targeted at you, because they're going to try to rid the world of the gospel. That's what's next. So I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.